The starship descended slowly towards Zithera, its sleek frame cutting through the lavender clouds that blanketed the planet. Commander Kyle Rendar stood in the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back, watching the floating cities drift above the luminous forests. He had been to many worlds, seen countless landscapes, but Zithera held a beauty unlike any other. The forests glowed softly with bioluminescent plants. Rivers shimmered like liquid silver, and above it all, the sky cities floated as if suspended by magic. Kale's body bore the stories of his past. His arms, chest, and face were marked with scars, some jagged, some faded, but all earned through battles that had left him alive while others had fallen. Each mark was a memory, a lesson, a warning, a reminder. To most, they were a curiosity, perhaps even a warning. To Kale, they were proof that survival required more than strength. It required wisdom, patience, and heart. The human delegation had been welcomed by Zithera's government for talks of alliance against a rising cosmic threat. Kyle was not a diplomat. He was a soldier, a strategist, a protector. And yet here he was, expected to represent his species, to demonstrate not only human might, but human honor. "Commander," said Lieutenant Mira, standing beside him, her voice quiet against the hum of the engines, "the princess will observe your arrival. She is curious about your people." Kale's gaze did not leave the floating cities. "Curiosity is always a good thing," he said simply. He did not need to know why she was curious. History had taught him that curiosity often led to understanding. When the delegation finally landed, the palace of Zithera was unlike anything Kale had imagined. It was carved from crystal that caught the sunlight, reflecting 1,000 colors across the surrounding forests. The guards were tall and slender, with iridescent skin that shimmered with each movement. They did not carry weapons. Their presence alone commanded respect. Princess Lyra Veyrin stood on a balcony overlooking the arrival plaza. Her eyes were a vivid shade of green, sharp with intelligence and curiosity. She had heard stories of humans before, legends passed down through generations of Zitherans. Tales of their bravery, their victories, and their scars. Some stories spoke of humans traveling across stars to face dangers unimaginable, wielding courage like a sword. Lyra had always admired the stories, but dismissed them as exaggeration. Myths, she had thought. Tales for children. But now, she saw one of them in person, and there was no mistaking the truth in the lines and marks on his face, in the way he held himself, tall and steady despite the weight of his scars. The formal welcome was elaborate. Zitheran dignitaries hovered on platforms that floated above the plaza, their robes trailing like liquid light. Kyle walked with his head high, his uniform immaculate despite the long journey. Each step was careful, measured, and full of purpose. Whispers ran through the crowd, stories of the scars of the true protectors surfacing once more. Lyra could not look away. The legends had spoken of a human who bore the marks of countless battles, yet moved with grace and control. A leader who inspired loyalty not through fear, but through courage. And here he was, standing before her, real and alive. When the ceremony concluded, Kyle was escorted through the palace halls. The walls glimmered with holographic murals depicting Zithera's history, past wars, scientific triumphs, cultural achievements, but he barely noticed. His attention was drawn to the princess, who had followed him discreetly, her gaze lingering on the scars that decorated his body. "Commander Rendar!" a soft voice called, startling him. He turned to find Lyra stepping forward, curiosity bright in her eyes. "I have seen humans before, of course, but never one who carries so many marks of battle." Kale inclined his head. "Scars tell stories," he said simply. "They are not things to hide." Lyra studied him, noting the calm in his voice and the steadiness of his movements. She could feel the weight of experience in the way he carried himself. Legends speak of your people as brave and strong. I have wondered if the stories were true. Kyle smiled faintly, almost sadly. Sometimes stories grow from truth. Sometimes they do not. You must see for yourself. Lyra wanted to ask more, but the palace attendants interrupted, calling her away to other duties. She left with a lingering thought. There was something about him that went beyond myth, beyond legend. His scars were not just wounds, they were proof, evidence of a life lived on the edge of danger, yet guided by something deeper than mere survival. The days that followed were filled with official meetings and discussions of interstellar politics. Kyle listened more than he spoke, offering advice only when necessary, always measured, always precise. He observed the alien technology, the structure of their armies, the sophistication of their communication systems. And all the while, Lyra watched him. She asked questions about his life, about battles, about the wars that had left him so marked. Kale answered carefully, never boasting, never lamenting. Each story revealed not just courage, but humanity, the ability to make choices, to protect, to sacrifice. One evening, after the formalities had ended for the day, Kale requested to take a walk in the bioluminescent forest near the palace. Lyra, intrigued, followed. The forest glowed softly under their feet, light reflected in the streams and the leaves. Creatures with transparent wings fluttered past, their eyes shining like stars. "Why did you become a soldier?" Lyra asked quietly. Kale paused, looking at the soft glow of the forest before answering. "Because someone had to. Because others could not. War is never a choice I made lightly, but the world needs people who will stand when others cannot." Lyra nodded, sensing the weight of his words. "And the scars?" He raised his arm slightly, showing the faded lines across his skin. "Each one is a lesson, a failure, a success, a moment that taught me what it means to protect others. They are reminders that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it." Lyra considered this in silence. She had been taught to admire heroes in stories, but never had she seen someone embody them so fully. She realized that perhaps the legends of humans were not exaggeration after all. Their conversation was interrupted by the soft rustle of leaves. A small alien creature appeared, curious and timid, its body glowing faintly. Kyle knelt, extending a hand, and the creature approached, sensing no threat. Lyra watched in amazement, noting the ease with which Kale interacted with life, whether human, alien, or creature. There was respect in every movement, a gentle understanding that came from experience, not training. As they returned to the palace, Lyra felt a shift inside her. The skepticism she had held about human legends began to fade, replaced by curiosity and admiration. Kyle's presence, his scars, his calm courage, it all made the stories she had been taught seem alive, tangible, and real. That night, Lyra stood on her balcony looking out at the floating cities. She thought of Kale, of his stories, and of the quiet strength he carried. The legends spoke of humans who shaped worlds, who faced impossible odds, and who left marks not just on their bodies, but on the lives of others. She realized now that the legends were not just tales. They were warnings, lessons, and examples, waiting for someone like her to understand them. Kale, in his quarters, sat quietly, reviewing reports from his team. He felt the presence of the princess, not literally, but in the awareness that his life, his scars, and his experiences had already begun to make an impression on her. It was not recognition he sought, but understanding, and he could sense that Lyra's mind was beginning to grasp it. The planet of Zithera was peaceful for now, but the stars beyond held threats unknown. Kale's mission was more than diplomacy, it was preparation. And as he prepared, he realized that the first and perhaps most important battle was already won. The battle for understanding, for respect, and for the bridging of two species through shared courage and wisdom. In the glow of the floating cities, under the soft light of the bioluminescent forests, human and alien began a journey that would test legends, courage, and the very essence of heroism. And in that moment, Kale's scars were not marks of past pain. They were symbols of what humans could be, protectors, survivors, and living proof that legends were born not from fantasy, but from reality. Lyra would not forget the sight of him, standing tall against the backdrop of her world, scars and all. And she would carry that image in her mind, a seed of understanding that would grow into belief. For the first time, she began to see that perhaps the legends of her people, the myths she had been taught, were not so impossible after all. And as the stars twinkled above Zithera, Kale knew one truth. Survival, courage, and honor were universal. They crossed worlds, species, and cultures. And through his scars, the princess had begun to understand the legends, and perhaps the galaxy itself, a little better. The morning sun spilled across the floating cities of Zithera, painting the crystalline structures in shades of gold and violet. Commander Kale Rendar stood on the observation deck, watching the soft glow of the bioluminescent forests beneath him. The air was thick with moisture, carrying the sweet scent of alien flowers and the faint hum of the planet's energy fields. Despite the beauty, Kale's mind remained focused. The mission was not about sightseeing. It was about preparation, strategy, and understanding this world to protect it, and to secure an alliance against the unknown threat lurking in the void of space. Princess Lyra Varen arrived silently, almost like a shadow. She had grown bold over the past few days, her curiosity about Kale and his people transforming into something deeper. Today, she wanted more than stories. She wanted to see the man behind the scars, to understand what made humans legendary. "Commander," she said softly, stepping beside him, "I've been thinking about your stories, about the battles you survived. How do you bear it all?" Kale's gaze did not waver. "Scars do not define pain, they define survival. They are proof that life continues, that lessons are learned, and that mistakes can teach more than victories." He turned slightly to look at her. "Everyone bears scars, Princess. Yours may not be visible yet, but they exist in choices, regrets, and courage." Lyra studied him, her eyes drawn to the jagged marks across his arms and chest. Each scar seemed to whisper a tale of struggle and triumph. She realized that these were not just injuries healed. They were stories written into flesh, visible for anyone perceptive enough to see. "I want to understand them," she admitted. "Not just the battles, but what drove you to face them." Kale smiled faintly. "Very few ever do. Curiosity is a good start." They left the observation deck and descended into the forest below the palace. The path shimmered faintly under their feet, lit by plants that glowed in rhythmic pulses. Strange creatures scuttled across the undergrowth, their transparent wings catching the light, while larger, gentle beasts watched silently from a distance. Kale led Lyra to a small clearing near a crystalline stream. The water sparkled with colors she could not name, flowing with a gentle melodic hum. He motioned for her to sit. "Tell me about your people," Kale said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Legends, culture, what makes Zithera what it is?" Lyra took a deep breath, her mind racing with words. "We value wisdom, honor, and courage. Stories are our way of remembering. But we rarely see the truth behind them. Humans, I thought, were distant heroes. I did not believe the tales could be true." She hesitated. "And yet, here you are." Kyle nodded. "Stories often simplify reality. They turn humans into symbols rather than people. The truth is messier, bloodier, and sometimes lonely. But it is honest. And honesty is what you need if you are to understand courage. Lyra leaned forward. Show me, then. Show me what courage really is. Kale rose and gestured toward the forest. Then let us walk. They moved deeper into the glowing forest, careful to avoid the larger creatures that roamed silently. Kale spoke quietly as they walked, telling her tales of human battles across distant worlds. He did not glorify them, nor did he hide the horrors. He spoke of moments when friends fell beside him, of times he was forced to make impossible choices, and of nights spent questioning his own decisions. Lyra listened intently. Each story peeled back layers of myth, revealing humans not as invincible legends, but as beings of resilience, compassion, and strategy. She began to understand that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Their path brought them to a small clearing where a thin, glowing mist hovered over the ground. Without warning, the mist shifted violently, forming shapes that moved with intent. A rogue creature, its body shimmering like liquid metal, emerged from the fog. Its eyes glowed red, and its sharp appendages cut through the air as it advanced toward them. Lyra froze. She had been taught to rely on her guards to trust her people's technology. But Kyle did not hesitate. He moved smoothly, positioning himself between Lyra and the creature. He did not draw a weapon immediately. Instead, he observed, reading the creature's movements with the precision of a seasoned warrior. When it lunged, Kale sidestepped, using the momentum to throw it off balance. He then grabbed a fallen branch, modified it quickly with his toolkit, and struck at the creature with calculated force, aiming to disable rather than kill. Lyra watched in awe. The legends were alive before her eyes. Kale's scars were not just symbols of past battles. They were evidence of skill, experience, and an understanding of life itself. After a tense struggle, the creature retreated, wounded but alive. Kale breathed deeply, wiping sweat from his brow. Lyra approached him cautiously, her admiration growing with each step. You did not kill it," she said softly. "You could have, but you didn't." Kyle looked at her, his expression calm. "Every life has value, Princess. Courage is not measured by the ability to destroy, but by the ability to protect, to fight when necessary, to spare when possible, and to survive without losing your humanity." Lyra's mind raced. She realized that the legends she had read as a child were true, but only in part. Humans were more than symbols. They were teachers of life, bearers of experience, and creators of legends through deeds, not stories. They returned to the palace as the sun began to set. The floating cities glowed in soft hues of orange and pink, reflecting on the crystalline walls of the palace. Lyra felt a shift within her. Respect, curiosity, and inspiration mixed together, creating a newfound understanding of the legends and the people behind them. In the following days, Kyle began training with Zitharan guards, teaching them human strategies for defense and cooperation. He demonstrated tactics that combined Zitharan technology with human ingenuity, showing the importance of adaptability, observation, and patience. Lyra observed each session closely, fascinated not only by Kale's skill, but by his patience and methodical approach. She noticed how he corrected mistakes gently, how he emphasized learning rather than punishment. Each scar on his body became a lesson for the students, proof that experience, even painful, was valuable. Slowly, she realized that Kyle was shaping more than soldiers. He was shaping a mindset, a culture of courage and resilience. One evening, as they sat overlooking the bioluminescent forests, Lyra asked, "Do your people always fight for others? Or do you fight for yourselves too?" Kale considered this. Humans fight for many reasons: survival, protection, honor, love. But the most meaningful battles are the ones fought for others. They shape you more than those fought for yourself, and those are the battles that create legends. Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the glow of the forest below. And your scars? They are proof of that? Kyle flexed his fingers slowly. They are proof that I survived, yes. But more than that, they are reminders of choices I made, lessons I learned, and the people I protected. Every scar has a story, and every story has a lesson. Legends are born from understanding those lessons, not just remembering the deeds. She fell silent, thinking deeply. For the first time, she realized that the myths of her people, the human legends she had always admired from afar, were more than exaggerations. They were truths, seen through the lives of those who bore them. And now she was witnessing those truths firsthand. Their bond deepened as the days passed. Lyra found herself drawn to Kale not only for his stories and wisdom, but for the quiet strength he exuded. She began to see humans differently, not as distant heroes, but as real beings capable of extraordinary courage. The legends were not just tales, they were lessons waiting to be understood. One morning, a messenger arrived with urgent news. Scouts had detected unusual activity near the outskirts of the planetary system. Strange readings, unidentifiable energy signatures, and movement patterns inconsistent with known species. The threat was approaching Zithera, and the Council had yet to determine its nature or intent. Kale studied the reports carefully. "This is not ordinary," he said. "Whatever this is, it is advanced, intelligent, and potentially dangerous. We need to prepare." But panic will not help. Strategy, observation, and coordination will. Lyra's pulse quickened. She realized that the legends she had come to respect would soon be tested. Kyle's courage, patience, and experience would not just be stories anymore. They would be necessary for survival. Over the next few days, Kale worked tirelessly, assessing Zithera's defenses, training soldiers, and sharing his knowledge. Lyra assisted where she could, learning human tactics, asking questions, and observing every detail. She began to understand that courage was contagious. Seeing Kale act calmly under pressure inspired confidence in those around him. The planet's floating cities were bustling with preparation. Engineers reinforced the structures, strategists mapped potential enemy approaches, and citizens contributed however they could. Yet, amidst the chaos, Lyra could not shake her fascination with Kale. Every scar, every story, every movement of his body told her more about the legends than any book ever could. One night, Lyra found herself alone with Kale on the palace balcony, staring at the stars. The threat was out there, approaching silently, but the moment was calm. "You have changed how I see humans," she admitted softly. "I thought the stories were myths, but now I see the truth in you, in your scars, in your courage." Kyle did not answer immediately. He looked at her, eyes steady and thoughtful. "The truth is in action, Princess. Legends exist because people acted, humans acted, I acted, and now you have seen it. Understanding comes not from words, but from witnessing, experiencing, and remembering." Lyra nodded slowly, absorbing every word. She knew that the coming days would test them, but she also knew that Kale's presence had already changed her. She could face fear differently now, with courage, wisdom, and hope. The stars shone above Zithera, the floating cities glimmered below, and in that moment, human and alien stood side by side, ready to face whatever legends and reality had in store. The first step in understanding had been taken. The stories were no longer distant myths. They were alive, embodied in the scars of a human commander and reflected in the awe, respect, and understanding of a young alien princess. And far beyond Zithera, in the quiet darkness of space, something watched, waiting, testing, and drawing closer. The morning sky of Zithera was a deep shade of violet, streaked with gold, as the sun rose over the floating cities. Commander Kyle Rendar stood at the edge of the palace terrace, watching the horizon. Sensors and scanners had detected increasing movement near the system's outer rim. Whatever threat approached was large, intelligent, and relentless. Kale's expression was calm, but his mind was fully alert. Princess Lyra Varen joined him silently, her hands clasped behind her back. She had spent days learning from Kale, observing his training methods, and understanding the strategy he applied to his soldiers. Now, she could feel the weight of what was coming. "They're getting closer," she said softly. Kyle nodded. "Yes, and they will test everything we've prepared. Panic will not help. Strategy will." Lyra's eyes scanned the forests below and the floating cities above. She had seen these lands peaceful, glowing under the sun and moon. But she also knew that a storm was coming, one that would test Zithera like never before. Kale moved down from the terrace to the training grounds where Zitheran soldiers practiced maneuvers. He had combined human tactics with their advanced technology, teaching adaptability, teamwork, and careful observation. Soldiers ran drills that required both physical skill and mental acuity. Their weapons hummed with energy, and holographic targets flashed across the grounds, testing their speed and precision. Lyra watched as Kale moved among them, correcting posture, demonstrating formations, and explaining strategies. Every scar on his body seemed to serve as a silent lecture, proof of lessons learned through pain and experience. She began to understand that his scars were not just marks of survival, they were maps of wisdom. One of the soldiers hesitated during a drill, misjudging a move that could have cost them the simulation. Kale approached quietly, placing a hand on the soldier's shoulder. "Do not fear mistakes," he said firmly but calmly. "A mistake is only dangerous if you do not learn from it. Every error is a lesson. Every lesson strengthens you." Lyra's respect for Kale deepened. Here was a man whose courage had been forged in the fires of countless battles, yet who treated every soldier, human or alien, with patience and guidance. The day passed with rigorous drills and strategy sessions. By evening, Kyle and Lyra walked along a narrow bridge connecting two floating cities. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of indigo and silver. "Do you think they will attack soon?" Lyra asked. Kyle's eyes were steady, scanning the distant stars. "Sooner than you think. But we are ready, or we will be ready. Preparation is the most powerful weapon a people can have." Lyra nodded. She had learned that courage was not simply facing danger, it was preparing for it, knowing that preparation multiplied the chance of survival. That night, alarms sounded across Zithera. Sensors had detected a fleet entering the system, an immense collection of ships that radiated menace. Lyra watched from her balcony as shadowy forms moved silently above the planet. The creatures, known only in rumor and half-forgotten records, were unlike anything Zithera had faced before. They were called the Void Swarm, a race that consumed everything in its path, leaving nothing behind. Kale's voice was calm over the comms, directing soldiers, engineers, and strategists. "Maintain formation. Do not fire prematurely. Wait for my command. Observe, adapt, and strike together." Lyra's heart pounded, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had seen Kyle act in battle before, but this was different. The enemy was not a single creature or small group. It was an entire fleet, intelligent and deadly. And yet, Kale's composure never faltered. The first encounter came at twilight. Small scouting vessels of the Void Swarm descended into Zithara's atmosphere. Kale's forces, both human and Zitharan, were ready. Holographic shields flared, energy weapons hummed, and formations moved with precise coordination. Kale directed from the center, his commands concise and authoritative. Lyra observed as he engaged the fleet, not with reckless fury, but with calculated precision. Every maneuver was deliberate, every strike controlled. The soldiers trusted him, following his lead without hesitation. In that moment, she understood fully why the legends existed. Courage was not a simple act of bravery. It was discipline, sacrifice, and intelligence applied under pressure. During the battle, Kale noticed a group of Void Swarm drones heading toward a civilian sector. Without hesitation, he sprinted forward, moving between the soldiers and the drones. Energy blades clashed, shields flared, and his body moved with fluid efficiency. Lyra could see the scars on his arms glinting in the light of the shields, proof that he had survived countless battles and that every lesson had been learned well. He fought not recklessly, but strategically. He disarmed drones, disabled them, and protected civilians. Lyra felt a rush of admiration and fear, realizing that this was no simulation. This was real, and every choice Kale made carried life-or-death consequences. When the immediate threat passed, Kale retreated to the command center, directing reinforcements and assessing damage. Lyra followed, her mind racing. She had seen courage in stories, in legends, but she had never seen it embodied with such clarity. Kale's scars were no longer just marks of past battles. They were signs of wisdom, experience, and the weight of responsibility carried with honor. In the days that followed, the Void Swarm intensified its attacks. They struck from the shadows, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. Kale adapted constantly, analyzing patterns, predicting movements, and teaching Zitharan soldiers to do the same. Lyra trained alongside them, learning not just tactics, but the philosophy behind Kale's actions: patience, observation, and the understanding that courage and knowledge together were stronger than brute force. One night, Lyra approached Kale while he reviewed battle reports in the war room. Holographic displays projected enemy positions, damage reports, and suggested strategies. His hands moved quickly, annotating data, calculating probabilities, and issuing commands. "Commander," she said softly, "how do you keep calm? How do you think so clearly when lives are at stake?" Kale looked up, his eyes calm but focused. "Fear is natural, Princess. What matters is not feeling no fear, but controlling it. Panic clouds judgment, calm allows clarity, and clarity saves lives." Lyra nodded slowly. She realized that legends did not only teach of bravery, they taught of wisdom, self-control, and the ability to lead in impossible situations. Kale embodied all of these qualities, and his scars were a testament to every lesson learned. As the Void Swarm grew bolder, Kale introduced a daring plan: a combined human-Zitharan strike against their command vessels. It was risky, but the rewards were high. Soldiers trained tirelessly, mastering new formations, coordinating energy weapon use, and learning to anticipate enemy movements. Lyra was by Kale's side throughout, helping where she could and observing closely. Finally, the day of the strike arrived. Zithara's forces moved into formation, with Kale at the center, directing the attack. The sky above the planet was filled with the dark shapes of Void Swarm ships, and the battle began in earnest. Energy beams cut through the sky, explosions lit the clouds, and ships maneuvered with breathtaking speed. Kale's leadership was precise and unflinching. He anticipated enemy moves, adjusted formations, and directed strikes to maximize efficiency while minimizing risk to civilians. His scars, visible even under armor, told a story of experience and survival. Soldiers looked to him not just for commands, but for inspiration. Lyra watched, heart pounding, As Kale engaged directly in the fray, he moved with skill, striking only when necessary, protecting lives, and teaching his allies to do the same. Every decision reflected the lessons his scars had taught him: discipline, courage, and respect for life. During a critical moment, a Void Swarm vessel breached the outer shield near the palace. Kale acted without hesitation, intercepting the vessel, using both strategy and physical skill to neutralize the threat. Lyra felt awe and fear simultaneously, realizing that the man she had been learning from was capable of incredible heroism. After hours of fierce battle, Zithara's forces gained the upper hand. The Void Swarm retreated, damaged but not destroyed. Kyle assessed the battlefield, his mind already planning for the next encounter. Lyra approached, her expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "You did it," she said softly. "You protected them, all of them." Kale looked at her, calm but tired. "We did it together. Courage is not one person's strength. It is shared. Strategy is not just knowledge. It is trust. And survival is not about winning every battle. It is about learning, adapting, and living to protect what matters." Lyra's gaze fell to his scars. Realizing that each one had been earned through moments just like these, she now fully understood the legends, seeing them not as exaggerations, but as truth embodied in a human being. Courage, sacrifice, wisdom, and honor, they were all real and all lived through Kale's actions. That night, Zithara's people celebrated the temporary victory, but Kale and Lyra remained vigilant. The Void Swarm had retreated, but they would return. The real test of strategy, courage, and legend was still ahead. Lyra stood beside Kyle on the terrace, looking out at the glowing forests and floating cities. "I understand now," she said quietly. "The legends, they were true, not because humans are perfect, but because they act, they survive, they protect, they teach." Kyle nodded, his eyes scanning the stars. "Exactly. Legends are proof of what people can do when faced with impossible odds. My scars are proof. Yours will be too if you choose to act with courage when the time comes." Lyra's heart swelled with determination. She knew that the coming battles would test everything she had learned. But now, she understood the meaning of courage, the value of wisdom, and the truth behind the legends. She would fight, she would learn, and she would survive alongside Kyle, embodying the lessons he had taught her. Above Zithara, the stars shimmered with quiet intensity, signaling that the Void Swarm would return. And when they did, Kale's wisdom, experience, and the lessons etched into his scars would be the foundation of a defense that could save not just a planet, but the lives of countless beings. In that moment, Lyra understood fully. The legends were alive, not in stories or myths, but in the courage, strength, and honor of humans. The dawn broke over Zithara, casting the floating cities in hues of silver and pink. Commander Kyle Rendar stood at the edge of the palace terrace, eyes scanning the horizon. The Void Swarm had returned, larger and more organized than before. Their dark, shimmering vessels cut through the skies like living shadows. The previous battle had been only a prelude. Now the true test had arrived. Princess Lyra Verin joined him silently. Her heart pounded, but she stood tall. Over the past weeks, she had learned from Kyle, observed him in battle, and understood the meaning of courage, strategy, and sacrifice. Today, she would not only witness legends, she would take part in them. "They're closer than yesterday," Lyra said. "Their numbers, they're enormous." Kyle nodded. "Yes, but fear will not save them. Strategy, preparation, and unity will. Remember everything we practiced." He gestured toward the soldiers and engineers preparing below. "The people are ready, Princess. So are we." Zithara's army moved into formation, human and Zitharan forces blending their strategies seamlessly. Shields flared, energy weapons hummed, and drones patrolled the skies. Kyle's commands were precise, guiding the forces with clarity born of countless battles. Every movement, every decision reflected the lessons etched into his scars. Lyra watched as he adjusted formations, redirected energy flows, and coordinated defenses. She had trained with him, learned the tactics, and now understood the philosophy behind his decisions. Courage, yes, but tempered with wisdom and respect for life. The void swarm struck with ferocity. Vessels descended into the planet's atmosphere, their shadows blotting out the sun. Energy beams tore across the skies, striking buildings and defenses alike. Explosions lit the clouds, and cries of alarm echoed through the cities. Kyle moved swiftly among the front lines, directing soldiers, shielding civilians, and engaging enemy drones. He did not fight recklessly. Every strike was measured, every decision deliberate. Lyra followed, assisting where she could, coordinating communication between units and observing enemy patterns. A void swarm ship breached the central city, heading directly toward the palace. Kyle intercepted it, using a combination of energy weapons and tactical maneuvers to disable its shields. He engaged in close combat with the vessel's drones, moving with fluid precision. Lyra felt a mixture of awe and fear. His scars glinted in the light, each one a reminder of battles survived and lessons learned. Suddenly, a second ship appeared, striking from above. Kyle was wounded, energy searing across his arm. Lyra acted instinctively, rushing to shield him. Together they fought off the drones, moving with a coordination that seemed almost instinctual. "You've learned well," Kale said, his voice strained but steady. "Courage is not just my own, it's ours, shared." Lyra nodded, determination filling her chest. She realized that legends were not just about one hero. They were about the people who stood together, who learned from each other, and who acted in unison to face impossible odds. The battle raged for hours. The void swarm pressed relentlessly, testing every defense, probing every weakness. But Zithara's forces, guided by Kale's strategy and the human-Zitharan cooperation he had fostered, held strong. Lyra moved among the troops, inspiring them with words and actions, showing that courage was not confined to legend. It was alive in every person who chose to act. At a critical moment, Kale identified the lead vessel controlling the swarm's movements. Its destruction could turn the tide of the battle. He devised a daring plan, a coordinated strike using both human ingenuity and Zitharan technology. Lyra volunteered to assist, her training and understanding making her a crucial part of the mission. Together they led a small, elite unit to engage the command ship. Energy beams streaked across the sky, explosions rocked the air, and enemy drones swarmed around them. Kale's scars and experience guided every move, while Lyra's courage and quick thinking complemented his strategy perfectly. They disabled key systems, disrupted communications, and opened a path for the main forces to strike. The final confrontation was intense. Kale and Lyra faced the command ship's core defenses directly. They moved in perfect synchronization, dodging attacks, countering strikes, and exploiting weaknesses. With a decisive maneuver, Kale delivered the final blow, destabilizing the ship and causing a massive energy discharge that rippled across the battlefield. The void swarm faltered, their vessels scattered, retreating into the darkness of space. Zithara's defenses held, the city's citizens safe, and the alliance between humans and Zitharans stronger than ever. Exhausted but victorious, Kale and Lyra surveyed the battlefield. The scars on Kale's body were fresh reminders of the dangers faced, but they also symbolized survival, resilience, and the wisdom gained through action. Lyra looked at him with newfound respect. She understood now what the legends had meant. "They were real," she whispered. "The heroes, the legends. They existed, and now I see why. Because of you. Kale shook his head gently. Not because of me alone. Legends are proof of what people can do together. I was part of it, yes, but courage, strategy, and sacrifice belong to everyone who acts in the face of danger. Lyra studied his scars again, seeing them as living history. Every mark told a story of a choice made, a life protected, and a lesson learned. She realized that the legends of humans were not just tales to inspire awe, they were records of reality, proof of what beings were capable of when guided by courage and wisdom. In the days that followed, Zithara began to rebuild. The city's citizens repaired damage, strengthened defenses, and honored those who had fought bravely. Kyle oversaw training and reconstruction, ensuring that the lessons learned in battle were not forgotten. Lyra worked alongside him, sharing knowledge, teaching strategy, and embodying the courage she had learned from his example. The bond between human and princess deepened. Lyra had witnessed firsthand the reality behind the legends, and Kale had seen her grow into a leader capable of understanding and applying the lessons of courage and strategy. Together, they forged a new alliance, one built not only on necessity but on mutual respect, trust, and shared experiences. At night, standing on the palace balcony, Lyra looked out over the floating cities. The stars shone brightly above, a reminder of the vast universe beyond Zithara. She thought of the legends she had learned as a child and realized they were no longer distant myths. They were living truths, embodied in actions, scars, and choices. Kale joined her, quiet but present. "The universe is full of dangers," he said, "but it is also full of opportunities. Courage, wisdom, and cooperation will carry us forward." Lyra nodded. "And the legends, they are real because people live them." Kale smiled faintly. "Yes, and now you will carry them forward too. Your actions, your courage, and your choices will inspire stories for generations. That is what legends are, proof that beings can rise to meet impossible odds." As the twin moons rose over Zithara, casting silver light on the forests and cities, Lyra felt a deep sense of understanding and purpose. The legends were no longer stories of distant heroes. They were alive, reflected in the courage, scars, and wisdom of those who chose to act. Kyle's hand brushed hers lightly, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey. Together they had faced the void swarm, faced fear, and emerged victorious. Together they had proved that courage, strategy, and honor were universal, transcending species and worlds. In the quiet aftermath, Zithara began a new chapter. Its people had witnessed human courage, learned human strategy, and experienced firsthand the power of collaboration. And Princess Lyra, standing beside Kale, knew that the legends she had once doubted were true, not because they were perfect, but because humans lived them with resilience, wisdom, and heart. Kale looked out at the stars, scars visible in the soft moonlight, and knew that this was only the beginning. More challenges would come, more battles would test courage and strategy. But for now, Zithara was safe, and the bond between species had been strengthened by understanding, respect, and the living proof of legends. Lyra's eyes met his, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The stories of the past had found a new life in the present, and the legends of humans would now inspire not just her people but the galaxy itself. The night air shimmered with quiet energy as the planet healed, and in the glow of the floating cities and forests below, Princess Lyra finally understood. The legends were not exaggeration. They were real. They were alive. They were proof of courage, honor, and the strength of those who dared to face the impossible. The scars that Kale bore and the lessons they represented had illuminated the path. And from that moment onward, Zithara would remember, not just the victory over the void swarm, but the truth of the legends and the courage of one human who had shown them all what it meant to be truly heroic.